I just wanted to go over real quick with you guys what's going on with the markets, specifically Bitcoin or Litecoin. And what we're seeing right now, as I've indicated to you in the previous video, about the dwindling supply and the growing demand and the incredible scarcity of these assets, specifically Orange Coin, but increasingly Litecoin. Right? We're going to see returns start to go through the roof, especially as we see the mean reversion happening on the daily, for example, of Bitcoin, the mean reversion to the 3012 RMLR, for example. And also, if you look at Litecoin, you can see the distributions of mean reversion, significant positive returns in the coming likely weeks and months, and hot on the heels of what Bitcoin is doing. And that it will soon no longer be nearly 1,000 Litecoin per Bitcoin. It'll probably start to be 850 Litecoin per Bitcoin, and then 800, and then 750, and then 700, and so on, until we get to a place where, will it ever be 4 to 1? 4 Litecoins per Bitcoin? I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it will. In an ideal world, that would make sense, since Litecoin has literally all the same qualities and characteristics of Bitcoin. The only difference is there's 4 times as many Litecoins as there are Bitcoin, right? I mean, that's pretty much the only difference between them. And in theory, as far as the device goes, they both have the same practicality, they both have the same functionality, etc. So, but it may never be that they'll be 4 to 1. Okay, maybe they'll get to 200 to 1, or maybe they'll get to 100 to 1, or 20 to 1. If you remember back in, 2017, as Bitcoin was going up from 2015 to the all-time high of 2017, so like from the $300 range to the $20,000 range, there were numerous days along the way when Bitcoin was worth 20, 30, 40 times as much as Litecoin, but not more, right? Like you could get a Litecoin for, I don't know, $100, $120, when you could get Bitcoin for like, 10,000 or something like that, or even less, right? And even less, right? There were times when it was much closer than that. It was like $200 for a Litecoin. I mean, you look at the charts and you can see the comparison, right? There were multiple days when it was worth roughly 3, 4, 5% or something like that of a Bitcoin, and not 1,000 to 1, right? Which we've seen now for a long time, and now it's finally under 1,000 to 1 since it started rising again last month, and Litecoin popped up over $100 and has stayed above it nicely for now. Remember, there's always distributions and there's always mean reversions, right? These things are constantly happening. So don't be surprised if Bitcoin dips, if Litecoin dips below $100 again. It certainly can happen, right? Even during this quote-unquote bull run, which is a terrible term, which is, if you watch my videos, no such thing as a bull run, no such thing as a bear market. It's just buy pressure, sell pressure for extended periods of time, that people like to look at the big charts and say, oh, well, look, in this month it went up, and in this month it went up, and in this month it went up. So 12 months in a row it went up, so it must be a bull run. Well, let me remind you that last year in 2023, as the prices of crypto were shooting up insane amounts, right? And Bitcoin went from like 15 grand to like whatever it was, 45, like 3x price. People were still saying, oh, this is still a bear market. What? Solana went from like $8 to like, more than whatever it was, $150, right? And more than 10x in price. And people were like, oh, we're still in the bear market. Bro, what? If you were not stacking Solana at $8 a coin, and now you're thinking, oh, we're finally in a bull market. No, you've missed the majority of the gains that you could get from this bull market, right? Like you could have already 30x your value, right? Like if you bought them at 8 and you're selling them now for 240, what is that? That's a 30x, right? So keep that in mind, right? Bitcoin went up from 15 to like now over 100, right? That's like 8x, 9x in a year, and almost 2 years now. That's insane returns. And I know if you're an OG, we were used to seeing crypto, in the early days went up many thousands of percent in a year, but that's because it went from zero. So of course it had insane gains, right? From $0 to $1 is an insane amount of returns. From $1 to $10 when you started at 0 is more of an insane return. It continues to be an insane return, and so on. That's how Bitcoin has gone up 14 billion% in returns or whatever from its beginning. What does this message say? I love your videos. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you like my videos. Hope you subscribe and tell your friends. Leave a comment and all that stuff. Thank you. It helps the algorithm gods know to share my videos with more people who want to learn about the stuff I talk about. So Bitcoin or Litecoin, if you look at the volatility and the entropy and the probability statistics, you look at our charts at Alpha Trading, you'll see very clearly on higher time frames, they are set to do magnificent things. Right, very nice returns, upside and downside. Remember, you can trade the shorts to the downside. No reason not to, or at least you can take profits at the highs and wait for the next downside to low, and then buy low. And same thing with Solana and XRP. These are all coins that are doing well relatively compared to the last couple of years, and that are set to continue to do well, especially as we see more interest, like I said in the previous video, from institutions and governments. If the U.S. is going to buy up to 1 million Bitcoin, who knows where they're going to get them from? If Russia wants to compete with that, okay, so the U.S. has to buy like 600,000 more Bitcoin to get to 1 million. What are they going to do? Are they going to buy out all of MicroStrategy and then buy out, half of Grayscale? And then they'll get to 1 million that way? I don't think those companies are going to sell all their Bitcoin. They're in it for the long haul. What are they going to do? Buy them from the miners who are holding them and don't want to sell them? Good luck. Think about how bad it is also for regular retail people if these governments do actually buy hundreds of thousands or millions of Bitcoin. It defeats the ethos. And you can tell me all you want, but people will be collecting, they'll be happy to have 10,000 Satoshis. Maybe you think they'll be happy to have 10,000 Satoshis, but if 10,000 Satoshis, if Bitcoin ever gets to $100 million, that means 10,000 Satoshis will be worth $10,000 at a time when the dollar keeps decreasing in value. Do you think that $10,000 right now is life-changing? I mean, it might be for some people, but like really life-changing? It's not going to make you wealthy, $10,000, right? Not going to make you wealthy. It might help you get there, but it's not going to make you wealthy. You're going to be instantly wealthy if you have 10 grand, right? And in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time, by the time this fantastical number of 100 million per coin might happen in some imaginary future, do you think 10 grand is going to be worth more or less than it is now as they keep printing more and more dollars and it keeps losing purchasing power every year? 10 grand, by the time Bitcoin hits 100 million, if it ever does, 10 grand will be worth, like in dollars, will be worth, who knows, maybe 5 grand today? 2 grand, a grand, right? It's a silly calculation, right? People are misreading the numbers big time in that sense. They're thinking, if it ever gets to 100 million and I have, 0.1 Bitcoin, I'll be, I'll have $10 million, I'll be set for life. Will you though? Because if $10 million now sets you up for life, well, what if it's only worth like 5 million of today's money or 2 million of today's money or 1 million of today's money by the time it gets there? Would that actually set you up for life? My point being, right, that it is going to be increasingly more challenging for anybody to even get that amount, especially as these big organizations keep buying it all up. The average person will never have even 0.002 Bitcoin. At this rate, they'll be lucky to have 10,000 associates. Like, seriously. And by the way, the same will be true for Litecoin once that is mostly in the hands of whales. At the moment, it's still mostly in the hand of retail, just like Cardano is. Cardano is overwhelmingly in the hands of retail as a highly undervalued asset, in my opinion. Charles Hoskinson's personal behavior aside, there are other people that run it with him. Right? His recent antics over the last few years, kind of nonsensical. But you notice that once he said, because he's like, yeah, we're going to be worth more than Bitcoin in a year or two, there'd be no reason for Bitcoin and Ethereum to exist in another couple of years. I mean, that's just nuts. Sorry, but when you got governments buying this stuff, setting up reserves, and it's not just the federal government, by the way, in the U.S. Georgia wants to set one up. Texas wants to set one up. I think Florida wants to set one up. Like, every state wants to set one up. More and more, right? California probably does too. Who knows? Did you hear, by the way, Microsoft voted last week on whether or not they should be investing in Bitcoin? And you know what they said? They said no. Do you know why? Right? The majority of shares voted no. But hang on, was it the majority of shares or the majority of voters? Yeah, no, it was the majority of shares. The minority of voters. And who do some of their minority of voters include? Oh, BlackRock. Got it. And other companies that have huge stakes in everything. Guess why they voted no? They don't want Microsoft to invest in Bitcoin. They want to buy more Bitcoin. They want to keep Microsoft out of the business. And since they have a huge interest in Microsoft, it's easy for them to say no, right? Because they have a lot more voting power than the average shareholder who has, like, a few shares, a few hundred shares, a few thousand shares. They have millions and millions of shares. So they have way more voting power. So they could outvote anybody. And they did, along with their fellow large shareholders who want to keep Microsoft out of the Bitcoin game. And it will not be surprising if Microsoft makes a strategic decision in the coming months or years to start investing in it, regardless of the shareholder. Like, they might not make it a shareholder issue. They might find some other way to legally get it done, right? Because Russia are the things the executive of a company can do without shareholder action. Right? They can set up special projects. They can do all kinds of things without necessarily getting shareholder approval beforehand. Right? Even in a large public company like Microsoft. But just think about that. These companies, these huge companies who already have such a huge amount of this asset, are so greedy that they literally told one of the biggest tech companies in the world, no, you can't buy any of this stuff because we want more of it at cheap prices. Because to them, to BlackRock, 100K Bitcoin is cheap. I've been telling you guys this forever, right? They consider this a low-risk asset right now. Low risk because they see the returns, the potential returns are millions of dollars per coin or more. So what do they care if it's 100 grand a coin? They literally don't care, right? They want it to be, high enough that the average retail investor is scared to buy any, and low enough that for them, 100 grand a coin, so what? Let's buy 10,000 of them right now, and let's buy 30 tomorrow and 50,000 next week. They don't care. Hi, hello, Hairo, hello, Armina. Hello to all you guys. You guys are enjoying this. So it is no surprise that we're seeing these. By the way, it might be a weird connection issue for a couple seconds as it adjusts. Anyway, so it's no surprise that we're seeing Bitcoin prices where they are, and huge companies like Microsoft being told, no, you can't have any, by their massive shareholders who have tons of it. Right? They have huge amounts, copious quantities, and they're buying more. They want all of it. If you have any, and if you can avoid selling it to them, avoid selling it to them. They're not looking out for your best interest. They're looking out for their own interest. They're being greedy. They don't want you to have any at all. And by the way, when they're done buying up all the Bitcoin, they're going to finish up buying all the Ethereum, which they already also own most of that. And guess what they're going to go to next? They're going to go to Litecoin. Don't believe me. Look at what the ETFs are saying, right? The people that regulate the ETF boards. Look what they're saying, right? Where are they going to go? What are they going to buy next? What ETF are they buying next? Are they planning to sell next? They're planning to sell Litecoin ETFs. It's about as clear as day. They're all signaling, there's no interest in a Solana ETF. There's no interest in DOT. There's no interest in BN. By way of the fact that big whales like Grayscale are buying massive amounts of Litecoin, relatively massive amounts, they're all saying Litecoin is the next ETF. They're all saying, expect the next big purchase to be Litecoin ETFs. The next big sale event, if you will, to the public to be Litecoin ETFs, which will drive purchasing of Litecoin ETFs by the ETF issuers themselves, as well as other ETF issuers, because they buy each other's ETFs, they buy their own ETFs, they buy the underlying. They're going to be full on in the market with Litecoin ETFs, just like they are with Bitcoin ETFs and Ethereum ETFs. And if you think I'm wrong, please tell me why in the comments, because literally every indication right now that we have is that Litecoin is going to be the next ETF in crypto for all the obvious reasons I've given you. We're going to see it happen whether you like it or not. Prices are going to shoot through the roof. And what used to be a very, very dirt cheap coin at less than $100 is going to very likely cost more than $500, $600, $1,000 a coin. At which point, once it passes 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, again, psychologically, most people are going to say, "Oh, I can't buy that anymore." By that time, it'll be owned largely by whales if the retail holders don't manage. And again, if retail sells its bags, once it gets to 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000, who do you think is going to be buying it from them? Not other retail traders. It's going to be going right into the hands of the big investment companies, big investment banks, big, high frequency trading firms. The same. BlackRock, Citadel, Interview, all these companies. D.E. Shaw, you name it. Street Bank, central banks, the Federal Reserve, governments, they're all going to be buying Litecoin. Right? When they run out of Bitcoin to buy and they run out of Ethereum to buy, they're going to buy Litecoin. Are they going to buy Solana? Maybe, probably at some point, but probably it won't be the third thing they buy. And I know you can tell me, but Brazil has a Solana ETF. Wonderful. Yay, go Brazil. The U.S. government is still the leading government in terms of the military and the economy, right? The Fed, the Federal Reserve of the United States, is still the leading money printing machine on the world in terms of printing things that people perceive to have some kind of a value, even though that value is decreasing every single time they push the button, right? And every single day and every single year. $1 today buys you more than $1 tomorrow. So if you have $100 today and you can buy $100 of groceries, and tomorrow it might be 99.99 cents. By the end of the year, it'll be $99 worth that you can get, right? But that's compounding over years, right? So every year that 1%, and it's more than 1%, but let's say it's 1% decline, is compounded over time. So it's $1 today, that loss is compounded over time. So it won't take another $100 or 100 years to go from what you can get for $100 today, what you can get for like a penny today will cost you $100 in another 100 years. No, in another 100 years, if the dollar doesn't structurally change in some way, it's just not going to exist. Fiat doesn't last that long. And the fact that the dollar has existed this long is because of the structural changes they made along the way, like depegging from gold, depegging from paper gold. And of course, in the middle there somewhere, the whole Bretton Woods thing, where all the countries in the world after World War II agreed to make the dollar the global currency reserve for currency stability and trade for things like oil, right, and other things. That's why they created the SDR, right, the dollar reserve, synthetic dollar reserve that they used for trading oil, but really they used petrodollars, which are just, it's another fancy way of saying oil is bought and sold with dollars, American dollars, right? And that's what controls really the majority of the economy. And that's why the BRICS potential threat is, an innovation from those countries. But even they have said now to the incoming President Trump, reportedly, like Russia, I think Russia, and maybe Brazil or somebody, I forget who, a couple of the countries in the BRICS have already said they're not going to be, I think it was Russia and India, actually, have said they're not going to be doing anything with the BRICS currency that they want to use as a competitor to the dollar. So that's on hold for now. Whether that's a result of President Trump being elected or not is, open to debate. I would say it probably is related to that. You don't have to be a fan of his to recognize that or not, but they did have meetings about using that asset right before the election. And right after the election, they stopped talking about using that asset and they said they wouldn't. Now, the fact that they said that to him while he's still the president-elect, and that he had conversations at a high level, like with prime ministers or presidents, is probably a violation of the Logan Act, which, if you don't know what the Logan Act is, it states very clearly that non-government workers, and specifically leaders of countries, or people who work for the State Department and are authorized to do so, cannot discuss things like political policies, etc., with foreign leaders in any level that's even semi-official, like meeting with the president of some foreign country to discuss whatever, the war in Gaza or something, or the use of the dollar versus the BRICS reserve, or anything, or the idea of buying Bitcoin as a currency reserve for the U.S. It's illegal, right? It's called the Logan Act. Look it up if you don't know what it is. There are many instances of the Logan Act allegedly being violated by the current president-elect, going back to his first administration. But there's also probably, I'm sure on the other side just as well. And the fact is, it's the kind of act that does not always get enforced. It's a fact. So whether they enforce it selectively because of lack of resources, probably not, or because of political choices, maybe. Who knows, right? But the last time this president-elect was president, his Justice Department and Congress, when it was Democratically controlled and when it was Republican controlled, nobody went after them for that. And the current administration, I don't think, has been accused of violating the Logan Act, but there's certainly been other presidents who have, or allegedly have, or president-elects that allegedly have, and who got away with it for whatever reason, right? And if not, well, there you go, another breakthrough by the incoming president-elect. But he did it before he was president, when he was talking about Mexico will pay for this and that, and he wasn't just political stump speeching, right? He was like talking to the people in the Mexican government, allegedly, telling them that he wanted them to, pay for the wall or whatever. In theory, before he was president, that would have been a violation of the Logan Act. But again, it doesn't matter. Why do I point it out? Not to say this candidate or president is good or bad. No, I'm not saying that. Okay, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that there are political systems in place that have some kind of regulatory powers over what politicians are supposed to be able to say and supposed to not be able to say. And all that does affect policy. All that does affect the kind of thing that we see coming from political statesmen and that we see in the news, if you will, about what these characters are discussing and what they plan to do. And we know very clearly that they plan to keep on buying these crypto reserve assets or these crypto assets as reserve assets. Why do we know that? Well, they're buying up all the Bitcoin. There are governments already buying up Bitcoin, right? El Salvador is not just buying Bitcoin, they're also mining Bitcoin. Max Kaiser set up a mining company using geothermal energy or volcano energy or whatever. I think it's called Volcano, actually, right? His mining company. The government of Bhutan has set up mining and is a large holder of Bitcoin. Okay, they're not hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin like the US, but they have tens of thousands. You know, they took some profit recently, but whatever. They set up, they're using hydropower for their mining. So to think that governments around the world are not buying this, they are. And they're buying more than retail investors can buy, right? The average retail investor, well, retail investors are by definition not accredited investors, which means their net worth, unless they haven't filed to be accredited investors for some weird reason, their net worth isn't 5 million or more, or 10 million or more, whatever the number. I forget what the number is now. It'd be interesting to look that up because it's really. Some years ago, it was about 5 million. I remember back when it was like less than that, I think 2 million or 3 million, maybe even a million. Hang on. Minimum. Oh, it still says a million. No, I'm pretty sure it's higher than that. Well, whatever. It says a million. So there you go. I was sure it was like 5 million. But anyway, it's not. Anyway, apparently it says a million here, at least on Investopedia. And you must have. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's still a million. I'm surprised by that. I was really almost sure it was 5 million already, but I guess not. Anyway, most people don't have $1 million. You know what I mean? Like the average American family has to scrounge to pay a $500 emergency bill. They don't have enough for it. Like they have to find money to cover a $500 emergency, meaning a $500 expense beyond their monthly budget. $500 in America. Think about what it's like in Liberia, South Africa, Congo, Laos, Thailand, you name it, Oman. Even Oman, they have a lot of money relatively. Oman, they probably more than $500. Yemen, one of the poorest places on earth. Ethiopia, right? Eritrea, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Brazil, Costa Rica, Guatemala. What is it? What are their averages? Maybe a few of them I mentioned are around what the U.S. has. Maybe Costa Rica is around $500 or more. Costa Rica doesn't have a military, by the way. Fascinating place. Why don't they have a military? Because the U.S. military protects them. But they do have a very sizable, like a very well-armed and well-trained police force, like a paramilitary type police force. And they have the U.S. Navy protecting them. So what do they need a Navy for? What are they going to do? Have a bunch of dinghies? What do they need that for? They just have an agreement where they outsource their security and military interests to the U.S. by allowing the U.S. to use their land and sea, access for stuff. So no problem. Costa Rica is doing fine. But most countries in Central and South America, Mexico, I mean, they're doing better than they were 20 years ago thanks to NAFTA. But does the average Mexican family have $500 for an emergency? No, not even close. Does the average Chinese family have that, even though they have an enormous middle class now? Like hundreds of millions of people have been added to it? No, because still half the country lives in poverty. And when you're a country of 1.5 billion people, then that means that No, the average family does not have $500 for an emergency. Just think about that, right? Who does have that? Singapore, yeah, sure. In Singapore, the average family has more than $500, probably. Hong Kong, maybe. In Switzerland, probably. In Liechtenstein, almost surely, just look at Switzerland. But in most, even industrial, like in the UK, they probably don't have that, right? The UK is doing pretty well. In Israel, they probably don't have that. The average family. I'm not talking about the average high-tech family or something. No, the average family, countrywide, right? So if the average family doesn't have $500 for an emergency, what makes you think they're going to put thousands of their hard-earned dollars every year into a risky asset like crypto, which arguably they ought to be putting money into at least a little bit every week or month, $10, $50, $100, whatever they can afford, because of the insane returns. But the average retail investor has been scared away from markets for so long, they're brainwashed not to touch them. 90% of Americans are not in the markets of any kind. 90%. Only 10% of Americans have one stock of anything or more, right? And them that has one or more typically have more than one share of one company, right? They typically have many shares of multiple companies. And the rest of the country has nothing. And people clap when the stock market is going up. Why are you clapping? If you don't own anything in the market, when prices go up, you're just falling behind more. Unless your salary is going up equally or better than the price of goods and the cost of living, inflation and all that, right? And if you're the average worker, that's not happening. Oh, but since 2020, the average salary has gone up compared to the gross amounts companies are making, or the net revenues or net profits companies are making. Really? Since 1970 till 2024, profits have gone up like 1,000%. Salaries have not gone up pretty much at all. Maybe they've doubled, but doubling since 1970 to 2024 or 2020, if that's your mark for when they started getting better, in 50 years, doubling is not keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. It's falling far behind inflation. If you've never seen that graph, take a look, join the Discord. I'll show you the graph. It's in there. I posted it multiple times over the years. The disparity between profits soaring and salaries basically a flat line. And then, in 2020, prices started to go up a little. Why? Because of the whole thing where you couldn't leave your house for a while. So a lot of people a lot of companies had to pay more to get people to come into work. That didn't last. That fell back very quickly. And companies are already laying off people like crazy. And they're going to be doing it more, especially in tech and all the sectors where they saw the boost during 2020 and part of 2021. Since then, employment's going down. People are falling at work, right? People are getting canned left, right, and center. People being told, oh, no, you can't work remotely anymore. You have to come back in the office because productivity, even though it's been proven that people are more productive when they work at home. Greedy companies with short views on short time frames of views who want quarterly profits now, or just greed driven, like the wealthiest people on earth, the Bezoses and Musks and people of that sort who have more money than they will ever need in their life. Hundreds of billions of dollars is more than a person will ever need. But okay, if you find interesting ways to invest them and make the world better, do it. But for people like that to even pretend that they can relate to the average worker for them, it's ridiculous. Like the average office worker I'm not even talking about scientists who need to be in a clean environment, in like a sterile, clean lab, clean fabrication area. Obviously, those people need to go into the office, or then you go to the lab to do their work. But there's a lot of administrative work, marketing work, sales work, even developer work, BI work, DevOps work, huge amounts of the labor force can work from home, and in fact works better at home than they do in an office. And it's been proven. 2020, 2021 period unquestionably demonstrated that. Can I speak English? Yes, Anastasia, I am speaking English. Why do you ask? Do you not understand the words I'm saying? Am I speaking too technically? I mean, I think I'm pretty much speaking lay English here. So the labor force is going to keep, because you can barely speak English. Well, I am speaking English, Anastasia, and you're writing English, so you're okay. So if you want to learn English, listen to my video or watch other English content, read English books, read English newspapers. There you go. And keep your dictionary handy, or these days Google Translate or whatever. Do you guys remember dictionaries and encyclopedias? You know, books that have covers and pages in between them, and you would look up a word if you didn't know it. Yeah. So Bitcoin, Litecoin returns are set to go much higher. Does that mean they will only go higher from here? No, of course there will be mean reversions and distributions, and there will be price action following the returns up and down along the way. That's all it ever does. But over the coming years, they're definitely looking set, and especially in the coming months, even right in the next, because these governments are buying up every last shred that's available. They're not leaving any on the table. They don't want to. They don't want you to have any of it. You're in Australia. All right, congratulations. You know they speak English in Australia, right? G'day, mate. All right, that's the thing they say there. Give my regards to the Joeys. And if you're from Australia, you should know what that is. And if you don't, ask an Australian. They'll tell you. And also you can say, that's not a knife. That's a knife. This is a knife. That's not a knife. This is a knife. If you know what that is. Then you've seen some good pro-Australia tourism propaganda from the 80s. Good stuff. If you don't know what it is, ask an Australian. Yeah. So that's going to do it for now. I don't want to drone on too much. I have a lot more to talk about, but about other stuff, I'm going to save it for a different video. World current events and things like that. But yeah, about Bitcoin, I mean, what can I tell you? It's already at 103.2 thousand. It was at under 100 grand on Friday and Thursday and Wednesday and Tuesday and Monday. I kept telling you guys, once the thing stops banging the third band down on the STDEV, the third standard deviation band down on the 3012 RMLR on the daily, it is going to be in mean reversion to the 3012 RMLR, which is currently, if it were to do it today, it's a 16.9% move from where it is now, 16.95% move. If it takes an additional week to get there, it could be as high as 24%. If it takes an additional few weeks to get there, 26, 27%. If it takes another month, 28, almost 29%. And that's if those RMLRs don't repaint a little bit. And they typically will repaint a little bit. The direction won't repaint, usually. The direction is set. The direction is solid. There are times when the direction will change, but there's really, you have to have very extreme events for that. But the direction is pretty much set for it to grind up over the next 30 days. So it could be up more than 20% if it takes another week to get there. If it takes less than a week to get there, it could be up 16% this week or more. It could be up 15%, whatever. From where it is right now. From where it was a few days ago, it'll still be like an 18% move if you're holding that long. Personally, I wouldn't hold for that long, like on trades. It's different than holding on investments and bags. I'm talking about low time frame trading here. But yeah, it's going to have significant moves to the upside, and people are not going to know what to do when it's at. They already don't know what to do at 100K. Oh, I wish it would go back down to 60. I'll buy more. I bet you would. I bet if it went down to 10 grand, you'd buy more. Or you say you would, but then if it ever went there, you'd be freaking out. Oh, Bitcoin's over. It dropped to 10 grand. It's not worth anything anymore. I'm sorry. But if people are still paying 10 grand a piece for it, that's not worth nothing. Most people don't have 10 grand to buy something with. So just keep that in mind. Don't ignore the gift horse and the mouth it has on it. And don't look it in the mouth. But make sure that there's no Trojan soldiers stuck inside there, or no Greek soldiers stuck inside there, ready to spring out on you when you least expect it. And thank you for the like and subscribe. Appreciate it. No, I'm not Australia. And I'm not in Australia. But I'm definitely not Australia. If I was Australia, I'd be feeling very incontinent at the moment, but I'm pumped. That's a English pun, incontinent, right? Not able to hold things inside of me. It's a bit of a joke. All right. Well, I'm going to get going. Thank you all for being here again. And I'm going to talk later about other stuff, current affairs, political stuff to do with the Middle East and elsewhere. And that's going to do it for now. So cheers. Happy Bitcoining. Happy trading. Peace.